right, guys, welcome back to another episode of the Dynamic Lifestyle Podcast. We have the awesome, we have the lovely Rachel Scheer with us today.
Just of what we've all walked through together, my family, gone through living up to my own expectations, and not just being completely open and vulnerable with that. It's something that I'm definitely working on.
All right, guys, welcome back to another episode of the Dynamic Lifestyle Podcast. We have the awesome and we have the lovely Rachel Scheer with us today. Rachel, how are you doing today?
I'm doing amazing. Thank you for bringing me on today.
You're very welcome. Well, thank you for having us in your beautiful home with this beautiful view.
Awesome.
We got the two dogs right there. They're just keeping just watching everything. So
Hopefully they stay quiet.
exactly.
I feel super awkward being like this close to Eric. But
We're having a good
That
time.
looks great.
And real quick, guys, it's like I was telling Rachel before we hit record, it's been about over a year, like I was saying, since we've actually just done an in-person interview. We used to do all these back in LA. That was the beauty of it. Then COVID hit, so I was coming in this, I was like, man, is it gonna be awkward just looking at her, just asking these questions, this and that, but I think we'll be good to go.
Isn't that insane though? Just since COVID, how much harder it is to just be face to face with people. We've just been so used to being online and stuffed away in our homes for so long. But it's great. I'm excited to have you guys here today.
Yeah,
we get to do this in person.
Exactly.
Yeah.
It's just it's a different dynamic. It really is.
Yeah.
It's we could do this through Zoom. We could have set this up and we were just chatting about this, and I was let's do something different.
I think it's great to see though people who are successful still getting stumped and still getting nervous, and I think it's
100%.
great for people to actually see
100%,
them.
yeah.
That still happens to me. I'm like, man, I don't have it all figured out.
No.
And I hate when people are like, you have it all figured out, your life is perfect. I'm like, I'm still figuring it out, and I also know being surrounded around people who are ultra successful, make a ton of money, they don't have it figured out either.
We're all under construction.
Yes.
That's it's all about humility. It truly is.
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. So, Rachel, the next rapid fire question is: who has been the biggest influence in your life?
Biggest influence in my life. I'd say when it comes to business, and I'm going to separate this into a couple different buckets, that business has been my coach, Bedros Keuilian.
Okay. Good old Bedros.
Yes, he helped me tremendously really see my value and step into everything that I now do today. And kind of going back to what I was saying earlier about the power of working with a coach and remaining humble. He took away a lot of the second guessing of myself. It was one of the best decisions that I ever made to decide to invest into myself and to work with someone who was doing it, who's been through everything that I've walked through when it comes to business and is a living example of what I want, and just putting that trust in that person. So Bedros has made a massive, massive impact in my life. Beyond that, honestly, I'll just say my family. My family has been the greatest influence in my life, just of what we've all walked through together. My family, we've gone through, I feel just so much shit throughout our life, but one thing that I love about my family is we got each other's backs no matter what. We stick together, we will fight for each other. It's one of those things where we'll pick fights with each other. But if anyone else says shit about my brother or my sister, that's not gonna be okay. So we have each other's back, and just the amount of love that my family has for each other, it's hard to see. Recently, I actually brought my boyfriend over to meet my family for the first time ever.
Was that nerve-wracking?
Nerve-wracking for him. It was probably nerve-wracking for him. And I kind of prepped him of how my family is. They're super awkward. Their hilarious humor is something that's a huge part of my family. I had both of my dads there, so my mom was remarried, and it's just this weird situation that my family's in right now because my dad's physically disabled, and they kind of took him in to help him get on his feet because he was losing his home. But it's so cool because you don't see those type of things very often. And it's here I have a family where I have two dads taking in one of my other's dad, and it's just this massive amount of love. And sometimes I don't even realize it, but Aaron was just holy shit, there is so much love in this family, and that is so rare to really see. So I'd say, yeah, my family has been a massive, massive impact in
Okay.
where I'm at today.
Okay.
Right on.
All right, so let's wrap up these rapid questions and we'll get into some good stuff. What's your biggest worry these days?
Biggest worry? Man. I think it's just some of the normal like ebbs and flow of entrepreneurship, right? When the highs are high, they're great, and then there's those days where you don't have it all figured out. You're kind of like trying to get things where I think it should be right now, and everything may look great on paper, but just like the normal day-to-day struggles right now, I probably, fear the most of not living up to my own expectations, and that's just being completely open and vulnerable with that. It's something that I'm definitely working on, but I think as a high performer, as an ultra achiever, I was a gymnast and I was a dancer, and I've always had these insanely high standards for myself, which has got me to where I'm at today, which is the beautiful part about it. But the double-edged sword is there's kind of always that do more kind of mentality with everything. And I've been able to ground myself throughout this entire process. I do a lot of things, and I realized even this morning I was having one of those moments of just like getting anxious about some different things with work. Because it is hard. It's not just me anymore with my business. I'm managing, 5 other different coaches and an assistant, and we have 150 monthly clients right now. So it's just a lot of weight at times, and it's just living up to that expectation. But this morning I just had a moment where I was feeling a little bit anxious about it all, and I realized I was putting my value in the wrong things. So there's moments where I just realized that, hey, I'm putting my value in the wrong things, and I'm able to reground myself. So I'd say, my biggest fear is sometimes just not living up to that expectation, just being completely vulnerable and open about that. But it's something that I know, our worth is not based off of that. And we do this because of the impact that we get and make. But it is hard, that being an entrepreneur, the ups and the downs. And I think often a lot of people don't realize what they're getting into. When the highs are highs, it's amazing and you love it, and then literally the next week you could just be like, okay, what do I do now? What should I be working on? So it can be a struggle at times.
Yeah, and that's awesome, because I really respect that. Like, I'm reading this book right now by Ryan Holiday. It's called Courage is Now. And it's all about courage and overcoming your fears. And that right there, what you just said, takes courage, right? To admit that, to say that I was having that anxiety, that like, how am I going to take care of these 150 members, my team, my coaches, all that type of stuff. And it's just like, I was telling my clients today too about like courage, where it's like, you just have to like stand your ground. You got to be different instead of trying to always be better than other coaches, right? And for what you just said right now, just like how you have humility with that, that's just awesome to hear. Because someone will look at like your Instagram and be like, oh, she's got like 7 million followers, she's got it all together. Like, no, she's good. But for you to say that I respect that.
Yeah, and it truly is a roller coaster of ups and downs, entrepreneurism. So you mentioned like this morning you had like a moment where you had anxiety. So just for the listeners, like what was your like go-to tip to kind of just snap out of that and just gather your thoughts and everything?
Well, when I'm working out.
That
is my therapy. I went and I got in a workout here this morning. I took my mind off of things. For me, it's also writing out my thoughts. It's something that I have a lot of my clients even do, but sometimes when we have all of these thoughts just kind of jumbled up, just because we have a feeling doesn't always mean it's true. So I find that when you can put the thoughts on paper, you can really look at it from an outside perspective. You can then kind of rewrite what you truly actually want to believe and what that actually looks like. So that's, for me, what I do. I work out, I move my body, I create some blood flow, create some endorphins, come back, and then just kind of reframe what those thoughts are. Because I think, like I said at the beginning, thoughts are incredibly powerful, but we do have the ability to change our thoughts, which is going to create a completely different feeling and an outcome. So it takes definitely a lot of practice. I've had to do it for quite some time, just throughout my entire life. But it helps me every single time, just being able to go and do those two things, get out of my environment, change my state, and then just process through it.
I love that. And I always tell myself, like, there's 3 things you can control every day. That's your thoughts, your attitude, and your actions. I truly believe that. So let's carry this momentum with this, Rachel. So, like, entrepreneurism, right? So I'm curious to know, like, where did this drive come from, like, at an early age? Like, I'm always fascinated by that. Was it like an upbringing? Was it just like a burst of inspiration? Because now what you're doing is you're doing nutrition coaching through like functional medicine. So where did this drive come from to do all this?
You know, I've looked back and had tried to analyze that myself quite a bit. For a while I was like, was I always like a little entrepreneur as a kid? And actually I do have this photo of me not having a lemonade stand when I was 6 years old. I lived in Minnesota, by the way, and you know, the land of 10,000 lakes, there was fishing all the time, and instead of having a lemonade stand, I dug up a bunch of worms in my mom's garden, and I decided to have a stand to sell fishing worms instead.
Okay.
So like I look at that photo and I'm like, you know, was a little bit of the entrepreneurship kind of innate? You know, always trying to just like, I'm like, I'm not gonna buy lemonade, I'm just gonna dig up some worms in the backyard and sell them. And I made some money. People were like, this little girl's just so cute, look at her selling worms. But the drive, I would say, my upbringing for sure. I was a gymnast and I was a dancer. So I feel like I always had a drive, and for a while it was completely in athletics. I was a terrible student actually.
Okay.
I got awful grades. I got good enough grades, I should say, to get into a college, to get into Baylor, just kind of the bare minimum of what I needed.
Did you ditch school and all that?
Huh?
Did you ditch school and all that?
Did I ditch school? I would go home a lot.
Okay.
Yeah. I mean, I would go to school because we had dance early in the morning, and it was like before we ever had class. I would go do dance, and then it would be like first, second period, and I would play sick quite a bit. And I'd be like, Mom,
Gotcha.
come get me. I don't feel good, and I just would want to go home. I just did not want to be there. I love science, which is why I decided to get into nutrition. I actually wanted to be a doctor for quite some time.
Okay.
I'd say the drive just came from, you know, athletics for me was definitely an outlet from just how I grew up. I grew up in just, you know, I've told you a little bit about my family, but we had a very broken family as a kid, and for me that was just really how I escaped it all, was through gymnastics or dance. And then when I went off to college, I got into weightlifting because I just no longer was doing dance or gymnastics anymore. And for a while, I just really pursued that to an extreme. I got into bodybuilding, I was a competitor, and with anything that I do, I want to do it like to the very best. And sometimes that again can be a double-edged sword too, because I ended up having some health issues after I was competing for some time. I had hormonal imbalances, gut issues, thyroid issues. I think just because of a lot of the pressure that I put on myself emotionally, physically. Looking back now, hindsight of course, and you know, that's what really ended up getting me into functional medicine though, of course. So I think the avenue has kind of changed over time with kind of where I place that kind of achievement type mentality. It started off in like athleticism, and then I had the health issues. I got really interested in functional medicine, and then I decided to take that and turn that outlet into my business that I now have today, where I can help people through the health issues that I went through, because I just became massively obsessed with learning about gut health and hormones and thyroid, because what I walked through, and I was like, hey, you know, I like to think of it as like someone who has a very addictive personality, right? They can easily get addicted to drugs. Or they can kind of turn that avenue into something that could actually be positive for them and for themselves. So I feel like that's what I did in a lot of ways, is I said, hey, you know, when I do things, I do it to the extreme quite a bit, and I'm an avenue and route this towards making an impact in other people's lives, building a business, and actually using what I walked through to now help other people too.
Yeah, no, that's beautiful, and thanks for sharing. So it sounds like you turned your messes into your messages to impact other people.
Yes.
And that's what we feel like we're doing. And I want to go back to this, like if you don't mind just like talking about like your broken family, because we come from a background too. We lost our father at an early age, 17 years old, 3 days before Christmas. So we're no strangers to like a broken family and trauma. And I think that it should be a really good point for the listeners to hear this, because I know some people are probably going through this. So like, what were some of those things? Like when you say that you had a broken family, what was that? And it sounds like what you're doing was you masked your pain by just staying so busy, just achievement after achievement. And I know how that feels.
Yeah.
So I'd love to hear that.
Yeah, and I did mask it, and eventually I did have to go back and do the work and address it. I've been doing that for the last few years because you can put it in a little box and put it in the corner, and you can avoid it, but it always sneaks up at the most inconvenient time.
Absolutely.
Relationships, work. So I grew up in Minnesota, and my family, my dad and mom separated when I was a young kid, but we stayed all living together for quite some time during that period of my life. So it was a very, very blurry period. My dad fell into a massive depression during that period of his life. He actually attempted suicide himself. And then my mom just was and had her own journey of just pain of everything going on. So she sought, love outside through other men. And
Gotcha.
we're all living in the same home. And as this young girl, I was massively, neglected. I didn't really have a whole lot of parent figures. I could be gone for days. No one would really ask any questions and where I would be at. I could have been doing, God knows what, drugs, alcohol, getting into terrible things. Luckily for me, I was involved in sports and dance and gymnastics. So that kept me very grounded and allowed me to surround myself with other positive influences, which is why, for me, fitness and working out, it is my therapy. Whenever I feel hurt or there's other things going on in my life, I turn towards working out. It's just been that for me since I was a very, very young kid. So, fast forward to now where I'm at today and later periods of my life, I had a lot of abandonment issues, definitely. And that's a lot of the inner work that I ended up having to do was just that neglect. And for me, achievement ended up being a source of value for me, which is why that sometimes rears its head at the most inconvenienced time in my life. I'm very, very fortunate because I could have gone down a very, very dark path. Which is a similar path that a lot of people in my family have actually gone down. I come from a family who's highly addicted, drugs, alcoholism, and they've always kind of lived in this scarcity mindset. They've known, and my family has really kind of broken past what we call that family curse. So I've actually been the first person in my family in a really long time to try to do some of this massive amount of work on myself internally, physically, and to create this type of a life for myself. And it was a lot of work along the way, but it was so worth it because now I can honestly say I'm in a place where, yes, there's hard days of being an entrepreneur and the business and just things that we all struggle with, but I wouldn't trade it for anything in the entire world. And now I love my life. I love the business I've created. I love the impact that I get to make. I love my team. I love the relationship that I've been able to attract into my life. And I honestly think if I hadn't gone through all of those things and had to do the work, I wouldn't have the massive amount of empathy that I now have today with the people that I work with, and to be able to do this type of work. So in a way, it has become my superpower.
Yeah. And it's kind of like what Pastor Pete says too on Elevate Life. He goes, you have to grow through it before you go through it. Before you do it. So it sounds like that's what you did. And that's what we tell people too, is even with our story, now that we went through all that stuff and we did all the work, right? All the personal development, kind of healed all the trauma, it's like a wildfire when things get tough, because we have our days too with entrepreneurships, emotions, whatever it is, but it's like a wildfire. It doesn't get out of control anymore. We know how to kind of shut that shit down because of the work that we did. You know what I mean? So that's really cool how you explained all that stuff.
Yeah, and I just think real quick before you get into the next thing, I just think it's beautiful what you said, that you're you wouldn't have probably been who you are today and what you're doing right now, because I truly believe that. And it's right now what you're doing is you're impacting, inspiring so many people, and you probably don't even know that. You probably don't even get as much praise for all the things you're doing, but you probably will at some point. But it's you're writing each chapter, each page in this book going forward. It's awesome. Yeah.
Thank you. And for anybody who's listening, I remember moments of having those extremely low days, and a lot of these things came back up where I started to do the work actually after I got out of a 5.5-year relationship. I decided to walk away from that. And I think it's usually moments where there's a major life change, right? Whether someone goes through a breakup, a divorce, someone dies, a health issue, where they're kind of oh my gosh. And that's where they either, fall deeper and deeper into the pain, the turmoil and depression, or they decide I need to do this work and I really need to make a massive amount of change. And for me, I had known all of those things have happened in my life. I had forgiven my mom and my family, we had all those things, but I never actually really dove into how did that affect me now in everything in my life? So it was about 3 years ago that I really, after leaving that relationship, I decided to dive into all of that. It was really, really hard. I worked with a therapist for quite some time. I had to do a lot of that inner work. There was moments where it was extremely lonely along the way, but now to like get to where I'm at today, for anybody who's listening, I'm like, I'm so glad that I did that. That was the best decision that I ever made, because now I've been able to attract and be around the type of people that I want to be around, and I freaking love my life now, and that is so cool to say, because it's like I created it, right? And to come from where I did.
Exactly. It's awesome. All right, Rachel, let's switch gears here and let's talk about leadership, okay? Like, especially today, like in America, and just like what's going on. I don't want to get too political, but I kind of want to dip into this because it is a hot topic.
I feel like you do. I feel the energy.
We'll see where it goes. But with leadership today, like, number one, do you feel like there needs to be more leadership today? And then especially from like a creative or like an influencer standpoint, right? Because what I've seen like this whole past, like, let's just say 2 years, is a lot of these people that were quote unquote influencers were not really influencing, right? Like they've kind of just like completely either disappeared, or they don't even stand up or speak their mind of like what's truly going on, right?
I know, my bad. I know you're probably like, dude, why did you do that? I just really quick, and we'll be back to that video. I just want you to join our free Facebook group community for health and fitness coaches looking to get more online clients. So just click the link below in the description box, join it, absolutely free. We got some cool stuff in there, a lot of videos. We do live trainings every couple of months on there. And we got some cool freebies on there. So just make sure to click the link below, join our free Facebook group for health and fitness coaches that want to level up and get more online clients to create more income, impact, influence, independence. Back to the video.
So I want to know, like, what is your thoughts on that? Like, just like an influencer not speaking like their mind and kind of like standing like true to who they are with everything going on in the world right now.
I think a lot of influencers out there like are afraid of what would happen if they speak out on whether it's something that's happening right now in the world, and we're in like this massive divide right now, of course, with everything that's going on. Or whether it just be about, something that they truly believe in. And I think when you shrink yourself and you decide to play small and not stand up for the things that you believe in, it's a disservice to you and to the other people who are watching. And I know for me, being able to stand up and talk about the things that I believe in, and not even politics or anything like that, but if it's literally just about some of my own things that I've walked through, gut health stuff, hormonal imbalances, my own traumas, and be able to talk about those things and to be vulnerable on social media or to be a leader in that area, I think it also gives other people the freedom to do the same. And I think a lot of people are, how many times like thinking when someone else comes out and says what they believe in on social media that we're like, oh my gosh, me too. Thank you so much for saying that. And I think it takes a lot of these influencers who do have a large following, like we need to be the ones who will go first, because people are looking up to us in so many different ways. I know I talked a while back a little bit about like the whole vaccine, and I'm pro-choice 100%, and I respect everybody's beliefs, but I spoke about that, and it was unfortunate because I lost a few thousand followers just by putting that out there on social media. And at first it was like, oh my gosh, what did I do? But honestly, those people weren't my people anyway. They were just following me because I was staying in the middle ground and wasn't really, standing up for anything that I believed in. And what's unfortunate is the moments that you speak your truth, if people just disagree with that, they're like, oh, I don't even want to be associated with these people. So I think we do need more leadership right now, whether it is with whatever's going on in the world, or literally just being vulnerable and talking about the things like you're struggling with, because it helps other people. Instagram right now, it's a highlight reel quite a bit. Everybody's posting their vacations, the perfect relationships, their perfect bodies, and that's not real. And I think it's so cool when you can see an influencer like, hey, this is my bloated belly. Here's my cellulite.
Here's my morning face.
Here's some things that I've been struggling with recently, and it just it humanizes you, and that's what actually creates a massive, massive following and respect. And the people I follow, the people that I admire the most, are the people who, you know, who've walked through things that I've walked through, are able to be human, to be open and be vulnerable. I respect that far more than anybody who's just like preaching perfection out there.
Yeah, and that's something that we even like preach to like our students too, is we tell them like on your social media, don't put out a bunch of content where it's like a how-to content, where it's like, oh, the next exercise demonstration, the next like macro or whatever, right? Like talk about like the transformational stuff that you're talking about, right? Like how are you feeling? Like how can you make somebody think or feel different, right? Get inside like their psychology of what's going on today, you know? Because I think too many people are just, they just bypass it and they just like sweep it under the rug, like you said. And at the end of the day, if you're an influencer, you're supposed to be a leader. You have people kind of following you, watching you, and you got to stand up for your shit, you know? Because who else is going to do it?
Yeah. All of the best clients that have came to me, they tell me the number one reason why they came to work with me is because I've been through and I've walked through everything that they have walked through. And I even had a guy say, you are so vulnerable on social media, and you made me feel like I could be vulnerable with you, you know, with working with you as a coach. And I was like, how cool is that? Just by being vulnerable and talking about the things that I struggle with, by talking about my own health journey of what I walked through, that like massively attracted people, which sometimes made me scary. Like, you're like, oh my gosh, like people are gonna think like, hey, I'm a nutritionist, I should have had all these health issues and all these gut issues and struggle with body image or whatever, but that's what actually made people want to work with me.
Exactly, and it's because people buy coaches, not coaching.
Exactly. Yeah, and then just staying on this topic of just like leadership, like I mean, a lot of things are going on right now that are just out of our control. But is there like anything in particular that you just wake up and you're just like, you fear like going forward, just that something might happen that's just completely out of your control? And if not, that's totally cool too.
Fears in regards to leadership?
Just leadership, just anything that's going on like in America, just like could be something political, could just be the whole thing with divide that's going on, just anything.
Honestly, I stay out of a lot of that stuff right now. I think when you watch the news and you get into all of that right now, like I'm so protective of what I put into my mind. I don't watch scary movies, I don't do any of that kind of stuff for me. And yes, we want to be educated with everything that's going on. I'd say right now we definitely do need more leaders, more people talking about their beliefs, what they stand up for and what they believe in. I know for me, like just being a byproduct of what I believe in is incredibly important with everything that I do and being that light. I wouldn't say though I have any like massive fears right now.
No, it's good. And it's even just like too, like what Pastor Keith says, like live spirit-led, not fear-led. And I truly believe that. So no, it's just a question that I just had off the top of my head, but yeah, if there's nothing there, that's totally cool too. So let's shift gears here. So this is called the Dynamic Lifestyle Podcast. Like Chris and I are fascinated by, you know, high performers' day-to-day lives, like kind of your habits, your routines, what makes you successful. So walk us like through a day in the life of Rachel Scheer. Like what do you do in the morning till night, and yeah, give us some hacks here.
A little day in the life of Rachel Scheer. I'm very intentional about my mornings and my evenings, but honestly probably more so my morning routine. I wake up between 4 to 5 a.m. every single day.
Naturally or no alarm clock?
I do set an alarm clock, but my brain usually wakes me up before then. But I do use an alarm clock as a little bit of a safety measure. And my routine has definitely shifted and changed as I've changed and where my focus is on. But first thing I do in the morning, honestly, is actually coffee before anything else. But after I have coffee, this is when I work a little bit on my mindset. And I like to think of my morning routine as this kind of like putting on my armor every single day to like go out into the world and to show up the way that I need to do. And then on the opposite end, in my evening routine, it's kind of like me taking off a lot of that and stepping into just Rachel. But these are all versions of me. I think we all have different versions of ourselves. So my morning routine, I sit here normally actually right here on the couch, and I'm either reading a book, whether this is something on personal development, something for my business, or this is just something for my faith too.
Yep.
Sometimes I just kind of lean into whatever I'm feeling based off of the energy that day. I'm either reading a book, sometimes I'll do meditation work, but something for my mind to really just get myself into the right mindset to start that day.
Play offense, not defense.
Yes, exactly. And one thing I always tell my clients who come to me, they're like, I'm not motivated. Like, how do I get motivated? I'm like, well, you have to create the motivation.
Yeah.
I know I don't wake up motivated.
Yeah.
And I think for most people, we wake up and then immediately you start thinking about, oh my gosh, these are all the things I have to do today. Or you think like, oh my gosh, I just want to sleep a little bit longer. Like, we have all of these negative thoughts like first thing in the day.
Mm-hmm.
So I think the best thing you can do is try to create the thoughts that you want to think. So I'm very intentional. I'm putting, motivational things into my mind through personal development work. And I think our mind just loves to learn. Like, we feel excited when we learn something, whether it's about ourselves, whether it's about our business, whether we feel like we're growing in faith. So I'll do that here in the morning. I do a little bit of journaling. And sometimes I'll be doing some gratitudes, focusing on 3 things I'm grateful for, and my 3 intentions for the day. That's an easy way that I start journaling, but sometimes it's honestly just like me mind dumping. Whatever's going through my mind. Sometimes it's like what I talked about earlier, where maybe I'm struggling with something and I'm kind of doing some reframing with that. So I'm just working on my mind. So get my mind right, and then the next thing I do is usually some kind of movement. And if you guys follow me on social media, you'll see all my stories of me up here at the Star, at the field there, running sprints.
Okay.
I sometimes will go for a walk, I'll go for a run. I love doing sprints. I'm a power athlete. You'll not ever see me running like long distance, anything like that. But I think, motion creates emotion. So when we move our body, we create blood flow. This is like when you're lifting weights, you get a muscle pump, but we get blood flow to the brain. And honestly, this is where I've had all of my greatest ideas. It's usually when I've been out on a walk or in my morning routine. Everything that has created my business with now where it's at today has come from me in this morning routine, reading, writing, outside on a walk, and then I'm like, ooh, and I'll put a little notes in my phone.
I was going to ask you that. Do you like pop out?
Yeah, I'll pop on the phone, I'll take
like
a little bit of notes, and it's the best feeling in the world. Sometimes I'm out there on a walk and I may be doing some visualization, things like that. I always have music going too, some kind of like meditation music. So those 2 things, something for my mind, something for my movement. I call that like the M&M morning routine. I think, as long as you're doing one thing for each of that, it's a very effective way for anybody to start with a morning routine. If you don't like to meditate, read. If you don't like to read, write. And it doesn't have to be, super long. It can be for honestly 5 minutes of the mind, 15 minutes of movement. So it's a very, very easy way to incorporate it. And sometimes mine's shorter, sometimes it's longer. Kind of just depends on what my day looks like. So I do that, come back, get ready, of course, and I blast the music as I'm getting ready. You will never hear me blast in the music in the evening time. Like, there's a party, it'll be like, it's like at 6 in the morning, and my neighbors are like, oh my, what is this girl doing? And I'm probably annoying everybody. So I take a shower, sometimes a cold shower. I was on the cold shower, like bandwagon for quite some time. And I got off of it, need to get back on it.
rough, especially when it's getting cold.
Now it's cold. You can't really do a real cold shower in Texas in the summer. There's no such thing. But it's a good time now to start doing that again. So I do that, blast the music. And now I'm really I feel like I've created that energy and I'm just ready to go crush my day. I work from home sometimes, or I go into my actual practice that is in Allen, Texas, and then I work with clients all day long. So we do the functional medicine, the testing. I have a team of registered dietitians, nurse practitioners, so a lot of times it's working on the business, sometimes it's working in the business with my own clients, coaching them, doing lab reviews. I usually do that until about 5, sometimes longer, and it just kind of depends on the day. Come back, take a little bit of time to reset, me time, and then I typically will get in a workout in the evening time. I don't normally consider my little 20-minute sprints, run, a workout.
Yeah,
That is
like-
like 100% just for like my mind.
Yeah, gotcha. Yeah.
Like it's not for me to try to lose weight or build muscle or
Right.
anything like that. Like that's my time to just like get in the right mindset. So I usually like to get in a little workout down here at Cowboys Fit, lift some weights, come back, and then just kind of, now I go into my evening routine of just kind of trying to decompress for the evening. I think something that's hard about running your own business is being able to turn it off.
Yeah.
Like you're always
Yeah.
on
That's the hardest part.
all the time. Like I'm always working, whether it's on the business or in the business or
Yeah.
coming up with new ideas. So I try to have a period after I work out to turn it off. But honestly, there's some nights where I am up late and I'm working on client case reviews or programs, or there's something I'm just really excited about, and I'm working on a new project. But I try to have some time where I have some like time to just reset, to relax, cook some dinner. Sometimes I do a little like meditative work, some more reading, and that's my day typically.
All
Yeah.
right, that's a full day right there.
That's a full day. That's a full day. That's a full Rachel day.
But you know what though, like I noticed is like, man, you spend so much time like priming your mind though to get ready for the day, to like battle and to win that day. And I think that's what people don't realize, like how much it really takes.
And I've never heard someone say motion creates emotion.
Yeah, I like what you
That's
said
really
too,
good.
is like we don't
Really
wake up motivated. It's 100% true. Like I'd be lying if I sat here and I'm like, oh, I'm psyched up for the day and I'm gonna do all this stuff. Like no, you have to get in that mode. You know what I mean? I don't think a lot of people realize that. So that was really good.
He's always he's up like an hour earlier than me, and like as soon as I get upstairs, I'm like, he's like always like complaining about something or telling me we got to do this and that. I'm like, dude, chill. Like I just got up here. Like I just
Haven't even had my coffee yet.
Yeah, someone has to be like that. But I want to ask you too, like in the past year, like sticking to lifestyle, has there been a habit or like a system or something like that that's like you learned or something or acquired? It's been like a game changer, like to like be like a little bit more of a higher performer, like 1 or 2%.
Like outside of my morning routine?
Yeah, just something you learned this like year where it's like a habit or a skill or just even like part of your, like a system that you're just like, man, this has been a game changer this year. I think I'm gonna keep that in there like going forward.
I'd say the part where I talked about writing my intentions for the day. I used to be an avid like checklist kind of a person, where I would just write out like everything that I needed to get done for the day and equate everything equally, which we know everything is not of equal importance. So for me, writing what is my number one intention for the day. Like if I were to get this one thing done, this would move the needle for me. And focusing on that first. I usually do 3 intentions, but pointing out the number one thing that I need to get done today. And I think it should be no more than 3, because then it does really just turn into a checklist overall. So I'd say that's been the biggest needle mover for me.
Okay, good, gotcha. So I got one deep question for you here. If you had 5 years to live, what would you stop doing?
5 years left to live?
Yes, it's a deep question, I know, it's a deep one, but what would you stop doing?
Wow. And
maybe there's not
lots of deep questions.
I know. So now that we've been doing this, I'm like, okay, I'm in like my little comfort zone. I'm like, all right, back to the interview style, just asking these questions. So yeah, maybe there's not something that you would stop doing, but is there something you could think of?
I would take more time to spend with my family and with the people that I love in my life. One of the hard parts about running your own business and being in it, and I love everything that I do, and like I said, I would never change a thing, but there is a lot of investment on the upfront of everything. And then, with the goal of getting to a point where you have the freedom of time and everything, but I'd be lying if I said, like, you don't start off like that. You don't start off with that freedom. There is a lot of investment on the upfront side of everything. And honestly, I think I'm still on the beginning phases of everything. I'm still a baby in this, even though some people may look at me and not think that's the case. I am just getting started, so I'm in this massive place of just focus and dedication of growing my business. I have a bunch of other different businesses that I'm wanting to do. So there is a lot of time and there's sacrifice that has gone into that. And there's been social life sacrifices. We talked about this a little bit earlier, but I'm like, I do not go out, I do not drink. Like I'm in bed by like 9 o'clock every single night because I'm up at 4 to 5 a.m. doing my whole morning routine so I can show up and get everything done that I need to throughout the day to continue to move the deal with the life that I want to create for
Exactly.
myself.
Yeah.
And it's not just for me, like I said, I truly love the impact that I get to make, to create the freedom for my team, my own coaches, you know, to literally see the transformation of the people I work with mentally and physically is truly rewarding. But sometimes I don't get to have as much time with my family. My boyfriend who lives in California, we're long distance, so yeah, I would want to be, I'd say, I wouldn't know if I'd stop, but I'd want to create more time
It's
for that
tough,
in my
for
life.
sure. Yeah, it's tough to balance it all out. I hear you. Like sometimes you feel like you're just going 100 miles an hour. Sometimes it's like you're just gasping for air, and it's just like it's tough. But it's like it's the few that people. It's a few things like people are willing to sacrifice and do. You know, and that's what makes us like I feel like just special. You know, to keep pursuing this and keep creating impact. So yeah. I appreciate you sharing that.
Yeah.
So we're coming to the end of this interview. This has been amazing. Before I ask the last question, I want to take a moment just to commend you and just say thank you again for your time. I really value time. Thank you for just welcoming us to your home to have this interview. And thank you for just like everything that you're doing, for the impact, for your sharing your story, you know, being vulnerable, showing the courage. And just like I said, like just going to sleep at 9 o'clock, waking up at 4 in the morning, like much respect, Rachel. So I just wanted to just, you know, say thank you for all that you're doing.
How am I supposed to top that?
You're not gonna talk.
Yeah, thank you. And for anybody who's listening, if they could take anything out of today, you know, it would be that that piece of vulnerability. I never want to see another woman or man look at me and think that my life is perfect, that I have everything figured out. I'm still doing the work. I'm still trying to figure everything out. And I think, you know, being in the world of a lot of other high performers and coaches and ultra successful and ultra wealthy, I think nobody has it figured out. And I appreciate those people who can be human and be vulnerable. And like I said earlier, when you are, it gives other people the freedom to do the same.
Yeah,
Yeah.
100%.
And the two things you talked about earlier has really stuck out. This whole entire conversation is what those two skills are: is confidence and humility. And that's, you have that like spot on. Like I've noticed that the whole entire conversation. So it's like, dude, you walk the walk and talk the talk.
Yep. So my last question is, what does it mean to Rachel Scheer to live a dynamic lifestyle?
A dynamic lifestyle. I'd say having a dynamic lifestyle is being able to do work that you love and you truly believe in, that you're passionate about, and being able to create the freedom that you want for your life. I think that's what I'm truly after, is I want to have the freedom. I want to live in the nice home. I want to drive a nice car. I want to be able to travel. But to be able to do the things I love and to use what I've walked through to make an impact in other people's lives, I think that's like the greatest gift in the world. And that for me is a dynamic lifestyle.
Right.
We would say, Rachel, that's a bike drop, but I don't even want to drop this bike.
Bike
So where can the listeners learn more about what you're doing, follow you, and then is there anything that we could support you on?
You can follow me on Instagram at Rachel Scheer, S-C-H-E-R. Everybody else brings the C. My website's the same thing, rachelscheer.com. I have my own podcast, which is Scheer Madness. I do a bunch of interviews, talk on all the functional medicine good stuff, on gut health and hormones. It's a lot of fun. But yeah, just if anyone's interested in wanting to take more of a functional medicine approach, do all the lab testing, take an inside look, work on their mindset, check out my website, and I'd love to work with you.
Right on. So we'll have all that linked up in the show notes. Guys, go check out what Rachel's doing. She's amazing. But other than that, Rachel, thank you again for your time. We appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thanks, Rachel.
All right, guys. Until next time.